Heterodyning is using, so we need to understand a couple of basic concepts. One is that the breath holds harmonics. Mm-hmm. And the breath is the first thing you do when you're born and the last thing you do when you transition. Mm-hmm. The breath holds within it every single capacity that's required for you to do anything. Heal yourself, move up in consciousness, move down in consciousness. Once you understand how your breathing works and the harmonics in your breath work, you can understand how the energy of your body works, and then you can start to use it to, this is in one of the books that's just come out by William Shank and myself. It talks about hemoglobin and how oxygen allows you to create an expanded environment within yourself, okay? Once you know how to do that, you start to move into a heterodyne state, and those heterodyne states allow you to populate that with consciousness, and then you can start to see and feel out for other consciousness around you. Now, initially,
you got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. Always wonderful to be with you all again. And please remember, if you're liking the shows, to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, share the shows with your friends and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Well, today, look, I have these two beautiful, amazing human beings who are in Australia on the show today, Paul Hamden and SyAnn. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And we're going to have some fascinating conversation today. Let me read the bio. Paul and SyAnn are both lifelong contactees of the Zeta race with clear conscious recall of all their contacts without needing regression therapy to recall their experiences. Paul's earliest memories of being visited are from 18 months old, and in 1978, Paul and three friends witnessed what is now referred to as tic-tac craft, no more than 10 metres away. In 2013, in New South Wales, which is a state in Australia for people who are overseas listening to this, Paul arranged for a craft to come, and it physically landed with 20 people present.
Yep.
SyAnn's earliest memories of contact with the Zetas are from around 4 years old, when she was introduced to a small boy of a similar age. She met the same boy on board craft several years later. This boy was Paul. Both she and Paul have the same shared memories of time on board craft, as well as many other experiences on craft and with the Zetas. Around 25 years ago, Paul's relationship with the Zetas entered into a conscious two-way interactive training process. This resulted in facilitation of many healings by the Zetas for people with disease and physical injuries. SyAnn has been undergoing this training for the past 15 years and is in the early stage of this process. And for the last 6 years, she has been working with them when she creates her art, embedding their energy into her paintings. They have regular visitations by the Zetas to their home, which we're going to talk about today, including craft visits, which are experienced, photographed, and recorded by others. Through Paul, the Zetas have communicated much information over the years, which has been studied by scientists, resulting in the co-authorship and publication of many books by retired ex-government communication scientists, such as A Primer of the Zeta Race and The Zeta Interviews. The latest book, The Zeta Mind, is a short handbook for individuals who wish to learn how to safely contact extraterrestrial races. Mm-hmm. So exciting. And your website is the-zeta-connection.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to say, and I know it.
Trips us up all the time.
What's hard to say? The
Zeta-connection.com or something.
Something like
that. Whatever.
I was looking at that, and I was thinking, obviously, the ZetaConnection.com was already taken.
No, it's I've set it up so that you can just type that in.
Yeah, it should work with both if you just put it in. But anyway.
All right, well, let's explore what happened in the beginning. So it obviously says in the bio, Paul, that you were 18 months old. What was happening?
I remember, like a lot of people that are contacted, from the very beginning, you'll get to see beings walking around your room. But as a child, you've got no comparative processes. So there are no way for you to be able to go, well, this is a human, this is this, this is that. It doesn't work that way. And so generally you're accepting of any beings that come into the room. It doesn't matter how they look. And that's what happened. And so generally, when I sort of hit 5 years old, I started to be able to OBE and astral travel. And also I was being taken up on craft all the time, taken out of a locked house as well and left in the front yard when they leave. That was interesting. So there's a lot to this. I'm trying to actually write a book at the moment about it, and there's over 200 cognizant contacts that I've got, clear contacts. So it's really interesting to try to stitch it all together because I've never really tried.
And SyAnn, what about you? What are your memories when you were a child?
I mean, my first memories of the Zetas is, as I said, when I was 4.5 years old, and they didn't show themselves to me as they look then. They instead did what they typically do with very young contactees and found an image in my mind that I would accept as friendly. I didn't have the level of contact that Paul did. So they first showed themselves to me as 6-foot rabbits, which is always amusing to even say. But for my entire life, I've had this really bizarre recall of walking down in the hallway of where I used to live when I was that age. It's the middle of the night, everyone's in bed, and I'm up for some reason. I'm walking down the hall, and there by the entrance to the lounge is this 6-foot, maybe taller person dressed as a bunny rabbit, as far as I was concerned. And I wasn't confronted by that in any way. I was quite happy with that. And the next instant recollection is being in my lounge, sat on the ground, on the carpet, playing a game with a boy of a very similar age, just sat in front of me. And around us were 6 of these tall rabbits, just watching, not doing anything, not interacting, just very static, just observing. And I was the boy gave me a small toy. I remember that so very clearly. And for weeks after that, I woke up the next morning, and for weeks later, I was hunting high and low for that toy. Where is the toy? Mum, where was the toy? Could never find it. You've had similar
the same
things.
Yeah,
I mean, you would. Yeah. A couple of years later, like it says in the bio, I had a very complicated screen memory event take place, which ultimately resulted in when the screen memory dropped, I again was with Paul on the craft, and then I could see the beings as they truly looked, and that's a whole different story. I mean, that could take an hour to explain it itself, that one.
You say they're tall. What do they look like to you when you see them now that the screen memories are not there? Are they tall greys? Are they short?
Yeah, some of them are 3 foot tall, some of them are 4 foot, some are 5, some are 6, some are 7 foot tall.
Okay.
So there's all different heights. There's all different colours as well, within a colour range, within a scale. There are many. When people think of the grey species, we call them Zetas because that's where they're from. The Zeta Reticuli. It's a 63, or is it 64? 63 races of that one grey species. They all look different. Sometimes the difference is very subtle, and then sometimes it's very overt.
I think that's the problem, is that a lot of people. So the 62 of the races are actually working together, and there's one of the race which is classed as the abductors, and they're the ones that aren't part of the collective consciousness of the race. So they're the ones that are seen as being the ones that are doing all the abductions. whereas the other races are also contacting their own hybrids on planet. And so there's this real mixture of and confusion about, look, people say, we're being abducted. Other people say, well, hang on, we're being contacted. There's this difference. And once you work out which race it is that's contacting you, then you can work out whether it's being done by free will or not free will.
Interesting. I'd love you to go into that, it being done by free will or not free will. From my understanding, talking with spirit, that anything that's happening to us along those lines has been a soul agreement before we've even incarnated into a physical human body, into this dimension. But then, of course, we come into the veil of forgetfulness and we forget all these soul agreements. And so it looks like that it's not your will to be abducted. Yeah. So what do you mean by free will or not free will?
Yeah. You see, these agreements that we make, and we work, we're mediums, we work with spirits all the time. And we see this being said by spirits and by communicators and all the rest of it. But a lot of extraterrestrials, they don't abide by that. They just do whatever they want. And so although a person has all these agreements with guides, spirits, whatever, loved ones, the oversoul and spirit realm, when they come, they have a macro overview of what they believe is going to take place in their life. But the micro is when the person individuates their walk, their own consciousness into the pathway. Then what happens is there are beings that are actually monitoring what some humans do. Now, those beings, specifically reptilians and other races, they're not interested at all in anybody's free will. And this is the problem with spiritualism. It tries to encompass everything and say, well, this is all just, free will and that. And then people bring up some really difficult questions in regards to, well, why did this happen to me? And I say, well, that's because your free will was broken. It's got nothing to do with the contracts that you've made. And this goes against what a lot of people want to know. They don't want to know this stuff. Yeah.
First time I spoke with you, Paul, it was a few years ago.
Okay.
And I think I met you in a Facebook group, and I reached out to you to share your experiences, and you didn't want to talk publicly about it. Do you want to talk about why? Yeah.
The contact was developing, and it was confronting, to say the least. I know we work with a lot of people, and a lot of them are really struggling. So they're being contacted nearly 24 hours a day. They've got physical evidence of that, all the way through to the range of people that are just seeing a light in the sky. So when you're developing yourself, or you're trying to work through what's going on around me. I mean, you're challenging, your psychological structure. You're trying to work through, what is real, what isn't real? How am I going to get evidence from this? And so I started to realize that if I was going to in any way understand what was going on around me, I needed to document everything first. I needed to evidence it all. And so when we work with the people now, we say the same thing to them. We say, listen, if you don't document this, or if you just allow yourself to just channel information and that information is never evidenced, then your mind can mirror image the abduction process or the contact process, and you'll end up just believing everything that you tell yourself. And they'll allow that to happen as well. They know, because we talk about this when we do our discussions online with people. There's the extraterrestrials, and then what's around them is the phenomenon. And the phenomenon is very strong. It's like a rabbit sitting on a road, seeing a car come down with the headlights on. All it can see is the lights at that point. But really, with the phenomenon, that what it's doing is generating that field, that information, and we have to try to look through it to see what's behind the lights. And that takes a massive amount of effort. The phenomenon for most people is downloads, channeling, everything. But if I said to a person, okay, so you're channeling, that's great. Ask the beings that's channeling through you for 5 strong pieces of evidence that they will give you, that you will be able to say, look, that actually happened in my life. And they would have to give a time frame for that. And a lot of people won't do it. They refuse to. They do not want to challenge their own contact. And I challenged my contact. And that's why I didn't want to talk to people publicly, because I wanted to make sure that I was getting the information that it was correct.
Yeah, and when you essentially dedicate your entire life to helping other people with the information that you're receiving and the contact that you're having on a daily basis, you have to be able to rely on what you are experiencing. If you can't rely upon it, then how can you possibly give anyone any help?
Yeah, we deal with some fairly sophisticated problems, unfortunately.
We do.
Especially to do with embedded technologies and implants, and not just what people think is, we've got medically evidence stuff. So,
okay, that's a whole other line of questioning. I want to stay on topic. Now I'm thinking about what you've just said. So the implants are from humans or from the Zetas or from other races?
No. There's many races. There's many races, and a lot of them use etheric technologies in people. And what happens is when you say evidenced or medical evidence, what you're saying is that a person would have sort of been diagnosed with something and have that medically evidenced. You then go do some work with them, and it turns out that they may have some sort of energetic issue. That's then removed. They then go back, go to a qualified medical practitioner, and it turns out that unwellness is now gone completely.
So the embedded technology is making people sick?
Yeah,
yep,
absolutely.
Always, yeah. And that's why a lot of the races at the moment are actually offering technology to humans, saying, oh, this will be, this will make your life much better, this will heal you, this. No, it doesn't. It actually does the complete opposite. What's
the purpose of them putting that technology in people?
Oh, it tracks humans. It allows them to channel energy from the human's body. It does lots of things.
Interesting. Because I've had a lot of people on the show talking about this, and many of them say that the technology that they've got in their body is actually helping them. It heals them. It does give them a greater awareness of their connection to the Star Nation people. So I've had a lot of people say the opposite, but everyone's perspective.
And let me just clarify that the technology in the past that was given by races, and I mean in the past, like 20 years ago, that actually did that. But the new technology, and this is the thing, we have to understand, we're a species sitting on a planet surrounded by an infinite universe with possibly 200 million races out there. We're fair game. And you know what? If you want to take over a planet, all you've got to do is convince them that the technology that they're giving you is good for you.
So what is your relationship with the Zeta race? What is your soul agreement or contract? Are you both people that have been incarnated in a Zeta life, and then you've volunteered to come to it? Like, I'm putting words in your mouth. Tell us what your relationship is.
There's 30% of the planet is hybrids, and what I've had sort of disclosed to us through the Zetas is that in the beginning, a lot of people were having, skin plugs taken from their legs, these sorts of things. And that was to do with the physical container and the consciousness that embeds that container. And so you've got a relationship with spirit realm coming in, you've got a relationship with extraterrestrials coming in, that creates a symbiotic relationship, which is the higher self. The ET part of a person has to discuss with the spirit component about free will, which is a good subject. And of course, if the spirit person wants to abide by that relationship with an ET, they create a hybrid consciousness. So there are lots of hybrid people on the planet. It's nothing unusual, nothing new, nothing special at all. To be honest, the human species was actually created by extraterrestrials as well. So, but everybody's an extraterrestrial. So there you go. Nobody's special. It's great. It's really good. Nobody's special. And that's the best part about that is that people can then say, well, okay, look, everybody's an ET generally. So let's get past that and let's start to make clear, proper, cognizant contact. And let's look at things like UAP disclosure, which is currently taking place, and the military actually putting out footage about craft. Because we've got two camps here. We've got humans giving out information about craft and all of the other stuff that goes with it. Like there's reporters that are giving out information. We've got Congress that's talking about UFOs now. And then we've got the woo crowd. which everything's love and light. Sorry, but everything's this and that, and there's, where are the facts? Okay, and so what we need to do is we need to stitch this with this, because at some point there's a middle ground, and all of us need to come together on this, and we need to work out if this is true and that's true, then why are people actually being abducted? Because today, if humans turn out and say, look, there is extraterrestrials, we've got craft, we've got bodies, we've got this, we've got that. Tomorrow, everybody's going to walk outside and look at the sky and go, well, where are the ET? And then the other people that have all been abducted are going to come forward and say, well, if you guys knew that this was happening, why didn't you stop it? Why did you let it take place? So there's a lot to this.
SyAnn, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I mean, you've pretty much covered it, but you know, I mean, we're already working pretty hard every day with lots of people who are trying to come to terms with the contact that they have. And, you know, this whole disclosure process, it's brilliant for many different reasons. It's frustrating for lots of reasons, but we look to the other side of disclosure and what that means for all the experiences and the contactees, the abductees. Where does it leave them? You know, who is going to be there to help all these people who finally feel they can come forward and say, yeah, this has happened to me as well. You know, it's a very difficult subject to understand and to get your head around.
And to discuss as well.
To even discuss with friends and family, you know, for most people who are experiencing the extreme end of it. And we talk to the people at that extreme end on a very regular basis. So, yeah, I mean, you know, disclosure is awesome, but it brings other issues that need to be addressed, I think, before it can happen.
One of the biggest issues is that a lot of people now, they're really super interested in it, and it is a very interesting subject. And all of a sudden they start channeling. Now they don't know why they're channeling, but they've had information come to them and they're part of this or they're part of that. And they didn't evidence anything, and next thing, something goes wrong. Now, I know that for a lot of people, it hasn't gone wrong for them, and they won't understand what I'm about to say, but it does go wrong, and it goes wrong badly. And people give themselves over far too easily to this information, far too easily for these energetic presences that come to people. They don't question them, they don't validate them, they don't evidence them. And because of that, you then got this situation where people that out of best intentions want the contact, it doesn't turn out that way. And unfortunately, I wish people were seeing more of this to actually ring some alarm bells about what's going on with people, about why do people accept technology for contact. You don't need to. You've got everything within you, the capacity within you to contact beings that love you and care about you. But why do people have to accept technology into them for contact and healing and these things? They just don't.
Well, interesting enough, I had that exact conversation with someone recently, and it was because it gave the technology, much like we don't need the internet to communicate. We could communicate on the, telepathic internet, but we don't know how to do that yet. So we're using technology, and it's like training wheels. So as we're using our technology as humans, it's training us to have this telepathic and psychic connection with each other. And then in the future, we'll get rid of the technology and we'll just use the technology in our consciousness technology. So that's exactly the conversation I had with someone about the technology that was implanted in them to have a stronger connection with their Star Nation family. And then as they develop that consciousness technology, that consciousness ability, the technology is no longer needed and they can take the implants out. But the question...
That's a valid thing, that some races do that.
Yeah.
But there are other races that are taking advantage of that. So somebody that hears you say that, who doesn't have contact with that race that is a decent race, will then allow that technology to come to them from a different race, thinking that that race is the one that's embedding them. And this is where the problems are. There's no evidence.
Yeah. need to stop and before you accept
think about what's going on.
Yeah.
But the question that I asked was, what is your connection with the Zeta race? Like, what is your agreement with them? What is your relationship with them?
The agreement is that we're authentic with them. And because of that...
So, sorry, say that again, Paul. The agreement is what?
The agreement with them is that we are authentic with them and they are authentic with us, that they will evidence themselves to us when we ask them to, and they do. That's our agreement.
Yep.
Okay, so what was your agreement before you incarnated? Because you've had contact since you're a baby. So there's obviously some agreement, some soul agreement that the two of you have had with the race. Like, you've incarnated into a human form. You say that you're hybrids. And there's obviously an agreement or a soul plan, a life plan that you've had with them. What is that? Do you know that?
Yeah, to be authentic with them.
Okay, to be authentic with them, but to like reveal them to the human race, to help people.
Just to be part of the process. Nothing special. Just in there with everybody else, in amongst the mess, trying to sort it out with everybody and understand that there's a wide range of contact. That's the first thing, and that we have to work in that range of contact with people, and that we have to provide clear, cognizant information to people about what is contact, and it's up to people to then decide to accept or reject what's being said, like with everybody, and then work out if they're going to use those rule sets in their own contact, such as CE5. What type of rule sets are they going to use within CE5? If they do that and then something happens, they're able to sit back and think about it with clarity as to what level of contact had actually taken place and what took place in the contact as well. That's what our job is.
What is the Zeta agenda with the human race? Why are they making contact with humans?
We're giving out a lot of scientific information. The primary of the Zeta race, the Zeta interviews, scientific consciousness. We get a lot of people that are reading these free books, contacting us, saying that they've sort of found some answers in their work from the Zetas. They're able to compare some of the work in the books with other books that they've read as well, and maybe other channelings. That's really good. That's sort of evidential for them. We're just there saying, look, here's the information from the Zetas. This is what they say, and think about it. Throw it away if you don't want it. That's fine as well. But here's something that is based more on sort of technical aspects of contact. What is contact? How do you actually create contact through heterodyning? We've talked about all these specific subjects. What is quanta? What is the fabric of the universe? Why do things work the way they do? It's all in the books, and they're free. So,
yeah, I was reading some stuff on your website last night. The information coming through is incredible. It's like mind-blowing. It's amazing. But the question was, why are the Zetas contacting the human race? What is their agenda? So you've told me that you're creating, you're getting information from them and you're offering it to humanity. What is their agenda?
Well, that's why they've given the information. That's their agenda, to give that clear information. Yeah.
So their agenda would be to help humanity evolve consciously.
Absolutely.
To help humanity evolve consciously, to teach people about consciousness technology.
Yep. Yeah, and from the Zeta's perspective, we'll be very clear here. They say all the time, nobody needs technology. That you have within you, within your consciousness, every single ability that is required for you to heal yourself, make contact, speak to source. You have everything that you need within you. You do not need anyone to give something to you and embed it into you, or any type of technologies that are external to you, that you have brought everything with you. You brought all of your symbols with you, all of your communication processes, everything. The only thing you need to do is remember that you have. And when you remember that you have, then you don't need any of that other stuff. And that's what they're saying quite clearly.
Yeah, but when I say consciousness technology, I mean the technology of our consciousness.
And I knew that.
Yeah. Well, look, I agree. I had Susie Hansen on the show a few times. Do you know Susie Hansen?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she came out and spoke in Sydney, and she was talking about the technology that they're developing, which they're giving to the human race to help us with healing. And one of the technologies, stuff that's coming out now, which is like a handheld X-ray machine that can look at the blood vessels, can look at the bones. You can sort of switch it, and it can look at the different components inside, like it looks like a hairbrush. And then I'm sitting there thinking, they have the ability, which I have to look inside the body with their technology, like you have an X-ray machine in your head, right? Why do you need an external, why are they developing this technology to give to humanity or helping humanity develop it? And she said exactly the same thing we discussed. It's a stepping stone. They don't need that technology. They're developing it for us. It's a stepping stone. Like as we're moving into the understanding that we have everything we need within us, within our consciousness, to travel the cosmos, to look inside bodies, to do healing, to contact, to communicate telepathically, to contact human. But we don't get that, so it's like baby steps for the human race to teach them.
Yeah. And that's why it's really important, like as a teacher that you are, that when people come to you and they ask you about how do you make contact, you say with evidence and validation and with clarity, and that you have all of your abilities within you to do that.
Yes, absolutely. Look, some of the stuff that I was reading last night, it just blew my mind. I actually sent it to Kevin. Do you know Kevin Briggs, who has had?
Yeah, I know Kevin.
You know Kevin. I said, read this on the website. And so I wanted to talk about some of the things that you wrote about their race, how they live, how they eat, reproduce, how they think, because it's very different to the way we do. And do you want to sort of discuss some of those things? How do they eat? Let's talk about how they eat.
Well, they don't. That's the first thing. I mean, would you like to talk? You know a lot about this. Would you like to talk about this? Go on. You talk.
They're vegan. They don't eat meat. They eat the fruits of plant, so a tomato rather than the tomato plant. Fruit yielding plants, and it's by agreement. They don't consume it by mouth. They do have a stomach, but from a very long time ago, it's totally non-functional. They have a tongue, but it doesn't work. Again, it's a remnant from an earlier stage of their physical evolution. They instead create a paste, a clear liquid paste from the material, and they generally just rub it on their skin, and it's allocated per being on planet or craft based on the capacity to provide for the race in that particular place on that day. It's all calculated, it's all individuated for that particular being's needs.
Yeah, that's right. And so they're very much cognizant of the planet's ability to recuperate. And so they only give out the nutritional value that the planet's able to give as for the species. So it could be that today you don't get as much as you got yesterday. And so from their perspective, the Zetas, they're very much in service to others, always in service to others. So I'll give you an example of healing. When they heal people, they'll take onto themselves that energetic instability within the etheric body of the person. The human will become well, but the Zeta will just transmute that unwellness into just a different type of energy. So they give of themselves all of the time. That's the difference. They're absolutely, and they say that in being service to others continually, that actually in some way you're in service to self, because if everybody around you is looked after, and they are also looking after you. And so it's not just one or the other, service to others, service to self, it's all things. It's a combined effort of consciousness. And so the race, they're very much a very peaceful race. I've been with them many, many times. There's just no words spoken by them. We've got, when they're in the house, they make clicking noises. that we've recorded. So we have conversations with them. They are very non-aggressive, completely non-aggressive. They speak to each other, obviously telepathy, but their telepathy's developed to a point where they don't need to need an assistance with the technology. So I'll give you an example. A child, an extraterrestrial Zeta child, is telepathic but doesn't have the ability to amplify the telepathy. And so they have to use their own technology to amplify the signal to be able to then speak to another being themselves. As you said before, with some technology that's given, once the person or the being knows how to use the technology's taken away and they just have their own ability. But the difference is it's their technology. They know what they're doing with it. And this is the concern is, and I'm not just talking about some things you can't see. I'm talking about physical technologies that anyone can touch. Where do they come from? You know, like where do these technologies come from that are on planet now? The ones that we don't really know about and that will come out ultimately. These technologies, they were from extraterrestrial races. So I'm not sure that humans really know what they're doing with all these craft. You know, you've heard about these craft that have been taken and back engineered. This is a lot of discussion about this. Is, you know, like I said, we could talk for a week. You know, there's just so much about this, but there's a lot to it. But the Zetas are a very peaceful race for sure.
Look, I've had a lot of conversations with different extraterrestrial races, and they've spoken to me about the way they have the mental agility they have compared to humans.
Mm-hmm.
You know, humans get upset and they don't even know how to shift their frequency in that upsetness, and they might stay upset for an hour, for a day, for a week, for years, for a lifetime. You know, they don't have the ability to understand how to focus their thoughts like the ETs. So I'd love to get into the discussion. I want to talk about healing too, but I would love to get into the discussion about how they think, and, you know, how, like, they've showed me how they can project different thought streams, telepathic thought streams, and talk to like a dozen people all at once, different conversations, like all happening at once. And it's just mind-boggling what they can do. Mind-boggling, excuse the pun, but mind-boggling what they can do. Have they talked to you about how they think and project thought and all that stuff?
Yeah, well, because we need to go a step back. So SyAnn and I have been trained by them for them to speak through us. That's the first thing. It's not channeling, and it's not this, it's not trance and all this. And I really struggled with it. I thought, well, what is this? You know, like if it's channeling, it's channeling. But they go, no, it's not actually channeling. They started initially years ago to use a clock, and they put a clock in the room, and I'd have to sit there and listen to the clock for an hour every day and all these sorts of things. I didn't know why. And then they'd start speaking, but all the sentences would come out backwards, and we have all that recorded. Then they sort of started to introduce a process called heterodyning, and I had to learn what heterodyning was. You know, heterodyning's a lot like binaural beats, but created by the person themselves. So you're creating your own consciousness and you're heterodyning to another being. And doing so, what you're doing is you're creating a meeting point in consciousness. Now, once a person knows how to heterodyne, the being can come into the human and safely come and then go, because you're heterodyning up, they're heterodyning down, and they're just words, really, when I say that. And they come, they speak through you, and then they leave, you flick back to your grounded process. But when we're with them and they're talking, what we see is a complete 360, but in a sphere. That's an expanded state. So if you ask them a question, they're not looking at one permeation of answer. They're looking at every single permeation of the answer. And what they do is they pick what, from a probability perspective, what is the highest possible probability for that answer to be the one that would give you the most clarification. And so when you're sitting there and they're working that way in that heterodyne state, they can be asked questions. and the questions then are placed into a field, and the field then generates the answer back. With trance work, and we do a lot of trance work with spirits, it's not that way at all. Spirits actually come and speak through us, and they don't use that process. What they're doing is they're just talking for themselves, whereas the Zetas are moving into these quantum fields, these fields of consciousness, and what they're doing is they're being able to give answers to things I've never heard of. They're able to talk about things that will happen in the future. They're able to, don't want to say predict, because that really causes a lot of people some issues, but they are able to, they've given us a lot of information that's happened, and we've like, okay, no problem, thanks for that. So that's how they think differently. But that's just one race. Say there's like the Council of Nine, which is around the species around the planet. Each of those races think differently. We talk about the Anunnaki, and we've had the Anunnaki come and speak in their own language, by the way, in Sumerian. Those beings think completely differently than the Zetas, or the Arcturians, or the Palladians, or the Collectors, or the Honorians. There's lots of races, and they all think differently.
So you said that they were in your house the other day, that they came and physically came into your house. So you're having physical experiences with them, like you're seeing them with your outside eyes, your physical eyes, not your third eye. Yeah. And you're communicating. I got that from a medium when we were talking about third eye versus physical eyes. She called them her outside eyes instead of her inner eye. You're having communication with them and you're speaking to them. You said you're not getting downloads. You said you're speaking with them. And then you said that they do clicks. How are they communicating with you? Are they speaking English? Are they, is it telepathic? Okay.
So it's the thing is, it's not, contact is not black and white. That's the first thing. So when people go, when I say to you, oh, I had a craft land physically, it did. And those beings were physical that came out of that craft. And they walked around us, put their hands on their shoulders. That you could hear them walking on the ground because the ground was very thick sand and it was crunchy. And there was nobody walking around. I had my eyes open. The only ones that were walking were the beings, right? Other people that were there, they can validate that it happened. This is the thing they can evidence it. So that's one way. Okay, so if I say, come to my house,
hang on. Are you seeing them with your physical eyes?
Physical eyes.
So you're seeing them as solid?
Yeah.
As other people that are with you seeing them as solid as well? Okay.
Yep. So I've had other situations where craft come. I've got people with me. I had my friends, two friends, they drove underneath the craft in their vehicle. Yeah, so that was pretty interesting. That was funny. I mean, you had to laugh. But so there's ways to come into an environment. One is that I can, if as a human, I can astrally project to somewhere, right? Or I can sit here and I can just remote view that. It may be the same sort of thing, but there's a different inflection to the consciousness. The other way is that I can actually project myself consciously and then using fine matter, populate my consciousness so that I create a distortion in the room. Now, in doing so, we start to move into things like ectoplasmic voice boxes that spirit people use for independent direct voice. Spirit people can speak for themselves in the air using an extended voice, an ectoplasmic voice box. So the thing is that the extraterrestrials, they also use these same sort of processes. They don't have to use ectoplasm, which is the life force of a medium. They can actually just bring matter into their structure of consciousness. And in doing so, they can create fabric within a room. And what they can do is they can affect the fabric to create the clicking. Okay. Now, the clicking is a representation of the things that they would be saying in words that were human. But of course, the clicking can't be associated with words that we know. We don't know any clicking words. We only just know our own words. They're able to translate the clicking into telepathic information. So you can just, once you're trained by them, you can just give it back and it goes back to them as clicks. There's some sort of intermediary process that's being used for them to be able to speak, because they don't even have the formation within the vocal structure of the tongue to say these words.
Or do the clicking.
Or do the
generated
clicking,
up in
and the clicking's done up here.
brain.
So if you're in the house physically, yeah, of course, there's going to be clicking and you'll hear it and all the rest of it. Then, of course, there's the other way, which I said, where they populate the consciousness into a fabric, and then people will see a distortion in the room as well. And then, of course, there's the other way. They bring a craft and a person's actually taken out of their house and then moved onto craft as well. There's so many different ways to interact with these beings. The reason I said I don't get downloads is, and that's not true, I actually got one download once. I got a download of about 100 symbols, and it was amazing and I loved it. And that was the only download I've ever had.
I guess we'd have to define download, wouldn't we? If you're receiving telepathic communication, I would say that was a download. So you're receiving telepathic communication from them all the time, aren't you?
Yeah, but no, see, so I just see it differently. So for me, a download is when I'm giving a package of information, and then I have to somehow pull it apart and work out what it means, right? Whereas with the telepathic communication, a lot of contactees and abductees get, it's actually two-way communications, question and answer and question, these sorts of things. That it's not, it may be seen as a download, but what am I downloading to you now and you're downloading to me? Do you see what I mean? Whereas if I just say, look, here's some information and walk away, you've got to go, okay, well, what does this mean? I've got to unpack this whole thing. It's a bit different. It's just different.
Yeah. And SyAnn, what about you?
Exactly the same.
With the communication with them. So what about with your art? That would be downloads, wouldn't it? Yeah, that'd be art.
No, yes, that's mine. No, it's not downloads. No, when I'm working with them to create, I go into kind of like a light altered state, and kind of in the same way that a Reiki practitioner would channel the earth energies, universal energies. There's some sort of transference of energy through me as a vessel or a drain pipe, going back to the Reiki work analogy, into the painting.
Embedded information.
Yeah, very much so.
It's really nice.
They often give me symbols as well, so they're many layered, multi-layered, so they're not just like slap it all on. The painting builds up and up.
They form over weeks and weeks. It's a really interesting process to watch. I'm not an artist, but it's good to watch. Yeah, it's good to watch. I'm not an artist.
But so they'll give me symbols, and I'll embed them into the, physically embed them, paint them in, and they'll be covered up as the painting goes on.
Do they communicate with you what their symbols could be utilized for, like what they're used for?
They'll be depending on the purpose of the painting. So a lot of people use the paintings as a connection tool to their own race. So I'll receive the imagery, and the energy of that connection will be channeled through into the painting as it's being created for that specific person.
So some would be connection tools, some would maybe be healing, maybe.
Yeah, whatever it is that they want to use. People often use them for, like, as a focus of meditation. So if it's connection, their focus of meditation will be for connection. If it's for healing, their focus of meditation will be healing, and they'd take the imagery, keep it in their mind's eye, and as they meditate, that all comes together. Well, that's the idea anyway. It generally works.
Yeah, of course.
Well, let's move into healing. So it said in the bio that you've been working with them to heal medical problems and injuries. How do they utilize healing? And I'd love to know about how they think about health and sickness and healing and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, there's a lot of questions there. Let's talk about how they're helping you heal or helping you facilitate healing with people.
Okay, so this is a big subject. So I never really saw myself in any way as being somebody that would want to be involved in healing. I just didn't even understand how that process could take place. And it's quite often when you're like that's the thing that you end up doing because you never wanted to do it in the first place. This all started with Kathleen Martin. I'm sure you've heard of Kathleen. She was healed by the Zetas through us about, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago or something. And this all started because, and it was a bit of an eye-opener for me, because I was also experiencing some chronic fatigue stuff and immune issues, and realised that this was happening to a lot of people that were being contacted. The Zetas then reversed Kathleen's unwellness. She's documented that and she's talked about it publicly as well. And I sat back and thought, well, okay, what's going on? I don't understand what's going on. How is this even possible? And they said to me that the higher self doesn't understand what unwellness is at all. It's got no capacity to understand unwellness. It's the local consciousness, which is the extensualized consciousness of the higher self that actually embeds itself in the physical form. And what it does is it understands unwellness. It also creates unwellness, and it also creates health. So depending on the way that we perceive something, the way that we emotionally, or consciously sort of manifest things in our lives, as everybody knows, that it can then manifest into the physical form. The Zetas work with the etheric body. And what they do is they ask the higher self if the higher self wants to be healed. And if the higher self says, yeah, absolutely, I'm on board with this, then what will happen is they'll do the work in the etheric body and then just walk away. And it'll materialize within the physical body. Now, with the scientist, William Trinite, he documented this. He had some sort of skin cancer on his nose, and it's in the book, The Prime of the Zeta Race. Scientists like to document things. And he was told that within a certain amount of days, this thing was going to fall off. And it did. On that day, it fell off and there was nothing underneath. This is what I mean about evidencing things, that it's possible. And what I've noticed is if you ask these beings to actually evidence themselves, they do in ways that are absolutely phenomenal. Whereas if they know that you won't ask for them to evidence themselves and they don't, it's the human that misses out on the experience of the evidence. When the evidence comes, it's just stunning.
Oh, that's a good point. If you want evidence, you need to ask for it for people that are having maybe psychic experiences or maybe abduction experiences, and they've got no physical evidence because the humans need to see it to believe it. And as the beautiful Wayne Dyer said, it actually works the other way around. When you believe it, you'll see it. So they're believing it, and then they're trying to tell people. But if they need physical evidence, all they need to do is ask, give me some physical evidence to show.
Absolutely.
Show my friends.
And the thing is, here's the thing. So I'm sitting here today and something pops up and says, hey, I'm from the planet A, B, and C. And you go, okay, great. Now, I've got a choice. I can either go, look, you just work through me, you can use me, I've got no problem with it, I just love everybody, right? Or you can say, okay, great, love your work, whatever that is. Tell me what it is that you do. Oh, well, we're here to save the planet. We're here to do this and that. Okay, great. How are you going to evidence that to me first? Because my life is important to me. My free will is important to me. I'm not just going to hand over my consciousness to you. You need to show me what you're going to do away from me, nothing to do with me. Give me some evidence. Tell me something that's going to take place. And because of that, I can then be fairly sure, not 100%, but fairly sure, if they do what they say that they're going to do, that they're going to be the beings that are worth working with. It's exactly the same for your gatekeeper. Now, this is spirit stuff. So with gatekeepers are the ones that they handle the traffic around the medium. And gatekeepers take a lot of effort to work with. They're not just normal guides. They are the big boys of spirits. And so they're the ones that are in charge of all of the energy around the medium, the withdrawal of the ectoplasmic life force of the medium, how it goes back into the medium as well, and what manifests. And so when a person or a medium is going to be working with a gatekeeper, they need to develop a relationship. That once again comes back to evidence. But let's be honest, if you go to a medium for a reading, for mental mediumship, you're asking, if someone says, oh, I've got your grandmother with me, the first thing you're doing is saying, well, give me some evidence that it's my grandmother. Everybody does it when they go to a medium. But for some reason, the minute we skip over to extraterrestrial contact, all the evidence flies out the window.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought that was funny. You think people are more gullible when it comes to it? I don't know about that. I think people are more skeptical, actually, Paul, when it comes to extraterrestrial. I think they're more skeptical because many people don't even believe they exist at all.
It's about to all be challenged at the moment because of all the disclosure that's taken.
Absolutely. But getting back to the healing, so we spoke about they'll work in the etheric field. And when they change it in the etheric field, because we're in density and we live under linear time, when we have the buffer of time, often healing doesn't happen immediately. It happens over a period of time. When you change it in the etheric, it needs to sort of filter down into the denser energetic structure, and then it shifts in the energetic structure. It might take an hour, might take a couple of days, might take a week.
Yep.
Yeah. And it can happen instantly too, depending on what's being healed. But so you spoke about healing because we get all up in our stuff and, worry about things and stress, and we create imbalance, which is what this disease is.
We all do.
What about them? Do they have dis-ease?
No.
Do they don't? Is that because of the way they think? Like they don't get imbalanced in their thinking?
That is one way, but let me just say that we'll look at this from a human perspective. It's always easier. Your home environment could be a place where when you've come from work and you go home and you hit the music and on it comes, and you've got your plants and you go around, you spray all your plants, and you've created this environment that when you move into it, you're going to really chill out, hopefully, right? Now, the Zetas specifically, their living quarters, you would say, is like an egg that you walk into the front of it. Now, what they are is these pods, but these pods you can walk into, they're as big as a room. They're created specifically at the same frequency as the Zeta. So that, say you meditate this morning and you go out and you chat with everybody and you come back, you've been shifted because you spoke to people. They're the same. They get shifted when they move out of their environment, their resonating chamber, and they go and do all their work. So when they come back in, when they step into that, it pulls them back to their state, the state of where they are before they left. And that's a technology that they have that is actually supporting them to stay in that space. They've also got art that does the same thing as well. And the art creates a resonance, and there's these beautiful little archives that you can walk through, or corridors, and they've got alcoves, not archives. Oh, that's an interesting word. And the art is actually pressed back into this area, and if you just stand in front of it, it can shift you in a way that you want to be shifted. So you're walking through an art gallery, you see a specific piece of work, and you go, oh, wow, that makes me feel this way. I love it. You go to the next one, you see that, and that makes you feel different. They have the same thing, but it's a technology that performs the function. It could just be a stick. Say just a stick, doesn't matter. It's the same stick in every alcove, but the stick is producing a different frequency.
Wow, cool.
Oh yeah, I know, I love it. It's great.
Okay, so you said that their pods is kind of like the med beds that we've been talking about, and it's creating it is rebalancing the energetic structure and creating the homeostasis. So the human body is constantly in a flux of trying to create homeostasis in the body, trying to rebalance the chemical structure, the energetic structure. It's constantly doing that, and it's like fighting hard. But they've got a technology where they walk into like a pod, which is like a med bed, and then it just all rebalances.
Well, the interesting thing is, Karen, is that they've actually inside the pods, inside the room, they've actually got this table that they can lay on. Mm-hmm. And that table is a med bed.
Yeah.
Okay. But they've got these things everywhere. So if they want to go on craft, so the craft comes somewhere, they go out And so that they don't bring any biological material back into the craft, these pods, these are upright pods that they go through, they scan them as they go through, and it gets rid of any biological material. So they've got them everywhere. Healing takes many forms.
Absolutely. I want to understand the difference. Well, I can't understand, but I want to ask you questions about the difference between them and us in their thinking. So we as humans have the ability to stress, to worry, to get angry, to get defensive, you know, to like hold on to resentment, to not forgive. And this causes the majority of our illness because we don't allow that perfection of the body that is constantly trying to rebalance and create the homeostasis to happen. We interfere with it with our thinking, right? Do they have the ability to stress, get upset, get aggressive? Like, do they have the range of emotion that humans do? They don't. Like, you're both shaking your head. No.
We've had so much. I'm going to give you another example. It's the only way I can really work. So I'm going to come into your mind and I'm going to show you how I think, right? And you sit back and you go, wow, I don't think that way at all. But you notice when I'm with you, or a being is with you, that if you do have a thought, it's pushed into their consciousness and it's thought about in the way that they would. So suddenly you're worrying about the bills, right? And they're like, well, we were in service to others. There are no bills. We all work as one. And so what we find is that it's because we individuate ourselves as beings here that we worry about everything. Whereas when we're with them or they're with their own, because they know that they can totally rely on each other, that's why the beings always travel in three, the Zetas and the others, that they are allowed to think the way that they do because they don't have to think as an individual. It is the individual that is, I don't want to say it, but it's the individual that is what causes the problem for themselves. Yeah.
No, I get it. I get it. And I was thinking about this yesterday as I was thinking about asking you these questions, chatting with the mob. You know, the individualization experience that we have, the autonomy experience that we have as humans, I think that they don't have that experience. They're so collectively unified. They don't see themselves as individuals like we do. Do they have any sort of individualization? You said that they all come in different shapes and sizes and colors, and they have some sort of individualization. They're not all sort of like cloned robots, are they?
No. And that's a big thing. You know, people go, oh, they're just biological AI, you know, all these sorts of things. That I can understand why people say that, but it's like saying to somebody, look, you know, look, there's a goalpost about 100 meters away. I want you to describe it to me. And the person goes, well, from my perspective, it's this high. And the next person's closer, and from their perspective, it's different. And every person's perspective is different. This is the whole problem with the way that people think and the way they think.
But going back to what you were saying, you said that it is our individualization that creates our stressful thoughts. In that, yes, I think that when we think, we've got to do it all ourselves, that there isn't any support, that there isn't any help, that we've got to, you know, go to work and pay the bills and, oh, it's 11:11 here. Like when we stress out about the I who has to do it, forgetting that we are, we're not an I, we are actually a part of a collective. We're part of a spiritual collective. We're part of a human collective. We're part of a cosmic collective where we're never separate and alone. But that idea, that belief in our separation causes most of our stress.
It does, but it's embedded in us because we are individuated in this society. You know, it's not hard to see that when we look around what's happening around us in society, politics, everything, we are individuated. We're not, you know, we're not really a species that works towards community. It would be great if we were, but something's going to happen that's going to cause that, and people are going to start to realize that we've only got each other. And it's going to be a massive shift. And when it does, it's going to be painful.
So what I'm seeing is, because they've moved beyond that separation and they've moved more into unity consciousness, it's just eliminated a big chunk of the limiting, stressful beliefs that humans engage in. It's just like wiped it out. So they don't even have access to those types of thoughts or beliefs because they understand their oneness with all, their unification with all, their unification with themselves, that they're not alone in the cosmos.
This is why so many people fall into communities that, look after them. Okay, so it's not cult behavior. It's not. It's more about understanding that in some places and spaces you are accepted for who you are, and that when your feet touch the ground in the morning, that the people around you actually care about you. So that's the difference with these races. I've seen them. I've been with them. I've experienced the way that they work with each other. And some people go, oh, that sounds like a utopian type, belief system. It's actually possible. It's possible. It's not. The only reason that we act the way we do is because we're in survival mode. If we weren't in survival mode all the time, like I'm going to mention it, COVID, okay? COVID drove everybody into survival mode. We're all got to sit
Don't mention the big C.
Don't mention it. Okay, don't.
No, I don't know.
No, but I'm not being negative about it. I'm just saying, like, all it did was drive people into their homes because we had to whatever. Fear. And it was more like now we're individuated again. Like, so we've been taken from community and pushed back into a smaller section, and everybody's hiding from everybody else. And it was like the best part about that process was it gave people time to sit back and think about what they feel is important in their own lives. It gave people the space to work from home and to, really start to understand what was important to them. And I think that has actually permeated society. They've got a lot of problems getting people back to work now. A lot of people are like, oh, no, I just can work from home because they've seen the truth.
Right, yeah.
As you said, technology allows them to do that.
A lot of good things came out of what we've been experiencing. A lot of good things have came out of what we've been experiencing. I was watching some vegan documentaries, and apparently because of the whole narrative around the virus being found in a wet market in Asia, a lot of people in Asia who have a very meat sort of diet became vegans because they were scared. They were worried about being sort of poisoned because of the narrative. And I thought, well, that was another good thing that happened. Anyway.
There were a lot of good things.
Yeah. But SyAnn, I wanted to talk to you. Have you had any healing done by the... Yeah.
Yeah. They sorted my... I used to have terrible bad neck result of a car accident when I was 17, 18. And, I had very restricted movement on my neck, and it was incredibly painful all the time. And I remember I was talking to Paul, oh God, this is 2010 or something. You were talking about going, something to do with the conference, We were having a discussion about how they might prove who they were to a whole, it was a theoretical conversation. How would the Zetas prove who they were through Paul to a whole massive room of people?
They could heal them.
And we were discussing that they could heal them. And I was thinking, yeah, they could do that. Because if everybody walked out the hall and they all had a healing of some sort, well, everybody had experienced something, or the vast majority had. Surely that's got to be evidence of something going on more than just somebody up there talking. Anyway, I woke up the next morning and my neck was completely better, like 100% completely better. And I remember thinking, yeah, okay, that's how they would do it. It was like they showed me how they would do it, but then again, by doing it.
about how many months ago was that when they did the healing with all those people?
What, down in?
Yeah, in Sydney.
In Sydney, yeah. I mean, I've been on the receiving end of a few healings. And I've also been part of many healings processes as well, where we've facilitated them working, and being on the other side of it, watching them do what they do. Now that's
and how they and the technology that they use to heal humans is absolutely mind-boggling. It's just when you see this stuff happening, you're
Yeah.
just like, what's going on? Like,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. So this guy, he was laying down and he couldn't speak, and he had a lot of trouble standing. That was the other thing. And I'm just standing there watching, because the room had shifted. We're in what's called an SQ, a synthetic quantum environment. And you could see the Zetas walking around. There was all these distortions in the room. And next thing, this light came down and just scanned this guy, but it wasn't scanning him. It was decompiling this guy. And in my mind, what I saw was infinite threads all being straightened. And then as the light came back the other way, all the threads started to recombine. The guy got off the table, spoke straight away, and was able to dance. Now, to me, when you see these things, as crazy as it sounds, it's like, I don't know what to say. So the guy said to me, you know what, Paul, come and stay at my house for a few days. So I went and stayed with him. He cooked dinner, he was dancing, he was having a great time. There was a lot of us there, it was great. And I watched the results of a person being healed by the Zetas that had, from their own perspective, lost their ability to enjoy their life. And they've done this so many times with people.
Yeah, I mean, from more straightforward things, which, although they're not like cancers being removed, like William's nose, and another lady had a cancer here that had to be removed, and she went to the doctors, it had disappeared, you know, no explanation, to more complex things where somebody, you know, was on the point of having surgery for their back because they could no longer walk. Well, they went out for a 5K run the next morning. You know, it really does vary, but it's always amazing.
So the Zetas are very much, this is the one thing about them, it's very much about you. What is it with you that makes your life the way that it is? And if they can in any way improve your health, under certain circumstances, they will. I've got to be very careful about that. They don't heal everybody. They just don't. And that's what it comes down to. We have to ask them if they'll heal a specific person. That's either yes or no. There's no in between.
Yeah. And the thing is, if they say yes, they will.
Then they will.
They do. It's not, it's very black and white. And, you know, that's been a big part of our evidencing process for them continuously over the years. It's not like, you know, we evidenced them once at the beginning. We've never done it since. We use that as a continual evidencing process. You know, they say they can do something. Well, now they need to do it.
Well, it was the same as, so here was the challenge. I used to sit with 7 people when I was developing, and the Zetas were talking. And someone said, you know what, just bring a craft. That's all you've got to do. And they went, okay, we'll bring a craft. And so they did. And then you see there's so much evidence right there. You have to say, well, maybe everybody should be saying in some way that they need to evidence these beings.
Well, they do.
You know, or the beings that they work with. You know what I mean?
And we have countless people coming to us saying, oh, yeah, we've got race A. That race A says they can materialize, but we're not ready yet. But when we're ready, they're going to materialize for us. And in the meantime, we're doing this for them, that for them, that for them. And we're all doing A, B, and C. 6 months later down the line, no, they haven't materialized yet. We're still not ready. A year down the line, no, they've not materialized yet. We're still not ready, you know. And that narrative, it never changes. These beings never do what they say they can do. Yeah.
They do bits.
Oh, it's like they give enough, just enough to keep the people, the group interested. But when it comes to the black and white, okay, now prove you can do what you say you can do.
Or go away.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Or go away, and it doesn't happen, and they stay.
They're helping us with our healing. When you said they don't help everybody. So what I'm getting is that they're going to look into your, for a better word, soul contract, and see that the healing that you need, is it something that you're learning from? Is it something that you have to take responsibility for? Because a lot of people can heal you. I've seen this with a lot of healers. I remember a friend of mine said that he healed his mother-in-law of cancer and then her back problem. And there was always something else, because she was using sickness to get attention, and so she kept manifesting sickness
We were talking
over
about this. Yeah.
and over again. And you know, often people need to take always people need to take absolute responsibility for what they're manifesting and creating in their life, including their health. And maybe if they're not ready to do that, maybe the Zetas won't touch them until they do that. Maybe.
No, they don't. I did say that before, that they would ask the higher self, and that's fine. But there are other determining factors. One is are you from their race?
Okay.
If you're from their race, then it's just yes. It's never no. That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
They heal their own because, of course, they're in service to others, so they have to heal you, right? Mm. The second one is if you're too close to terminating, then no, because it doesn't matter. Because if you're 2 weeks from termination and they have to resolve that, that means they've got to resolve terminating within themselves. They don't have that process to do that because they move from container to container.
Mm-hmm.
They match, they by choice. They live in a container, take some of their own DNA, maturate a new container, jump from that container to this one.
When you say container, you're talking about body container.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, fleshy container. Yeah.
Well, you're a container. I'm a container.
Well, my body is.
yeah. Well, yeah, your body is.
Yeah. So they move from body to body, container. And I think I read last night they live to up to 1,000 years.
Yeah, or more.
In one container.
Yeah.
Or they can change containers if they want.
Well, it'd be like, I say to you, listen, you've got a choice. You can either drive from Australia to the UK. You've got a special car, you can drive. You think, hang on, this could take me 6 weeks. Or you can fly. You go, you know what? I think I'm going to fly. So you've always got choice with things that you do. So with the Zetas, if they're going to do a trip that takes 6 days from Zeta Reticulum to here, they're not going themselves. They're not wasting 6 days. They just put a container in the craft, in the cylinders. They send the craft forward. The craft arrives. They telepathically then activate the bodies, and they move the bodies around the containers, and they work within the containers. When they finish, they just bring their consciousness back into their own form. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the craft then leaves and moves back to the planet. They've saved 12 days of travel time.
So a bit like the avatar phenomena, you know, the movie Avatar. You just place your consciousness in another life form, another body.
Like you've done.
Like I've done. How do you mean like I've done? Like we've all done that.
Yeah,
really.
we all did that. That's exactly, and I love that bit because that's what I say, no, like you've done, because people go, oh no, we've all done that. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, because people will sit there initially and they go, sounds like a movie, and then they go, hang on, I've done that as well. I've left wherever I was. I've animated a physical form, and then when I'm finished with it, I'm going to leave my physical form and go back. I've animated.
It's interesting, even the word left. I haven't actually left where I'm from. I've just extended a piece of my consciousness into this container, and I'm actually still there. The greater part of me, the higher self, the group soul, whatever you want to call that, is still there in that place, and I've just extended my consciousness or a part of my consciousness into a container. And so we've all done that to have this human experience.
Some of us have,
but they understand that as a part of their physical experiences, which we don't as humans. We think that this is all there is, this body, this me, this, and then I die and I cease to exist. But anyway, but I want to talk, like I'm looking at the time.
There are other races that don't do that. Just want to say that there are other races that don't individuate their form as Oversoul does.
That's a whole nother show. But you mentioned, because I had this written down, the SQE, the synthetic quantum environment, and the jump rooms. Can we talk a little bit about the jump rooms and the synthetic quantum environment and how they utilize that? That was just fascinating.
Well, supposedly Basiago and others were part of the Mars project, and they used the technology, the SQE, to jump to Mars using the SQEs. But there's some issues with the information around the SQE and the jump room technology, because the way the SQEs work is they take a copy of your environment, of you, and put you into the SQE, and you don't know that you're a copy of yourself because you've got all your original consciousness. If anything happens to you in that SQE, it doesn't replicate back to the original form. So if your arm gets torn off,
which is what happened.
Then although the person believes it happened, once the SQE is compacted and the experience is given back to the person, they look down, they see they've got their full arm. This is why there's a problem with the SQE stuff. And to be honest, it's far too technical to discuss in this, right? All I can say is that SQEs are used by other races and some humans as well to create experience for other people.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused because I don't know who you're talking about. That you said that happened to him, and I'm a bit confused about it because
that's okay.
What is an SQE?
A synthetic quantum environment. So a synthetic quantum environment is a structure that is built in consciousness that has specific functionality that allows the beings or the humans that are inside the SQE to experience things like a holographic environment. So we, the other day, had some people with us, and I created an SQE, and everybody inside the SQE, inside the room, believed that they were inside a craft.
I've got about a million other questions about that. So you're doing that in consciousness, so you're doing that in like a meditative state?
Okay, so when the person goes into trance, they all have ability to be able to expand their consciousness and their etheric body. If you are trained how to accentualize yourself, you can allow other people to come into your environment. The next step past that is that you actually use an SQE technology that the extraterrestrials have, and you activate it and allow people to come into the SQE with you, and they can also, it's something like the Monroe stuff where they do the consensus reality journeys. And
it's a bit like the holodeck on Star Trek.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Something like that?
That would be the easiest
way.
That's
the easiest way to describe it.
Be the best analogy, I guess, that people could use. Yeah.
So
okay,
inside
when you create
SQEs, there also healings take place with people. So if this is you and they take a copy of you and they put it into the SQ and they heal this, then they compact the SQE, this experience goes back and resets the etheric body.
When you were describing the healing, like the person being, the molecular structure taken apart in streams.
Yeah, decompiled,
decombobulated, I'm thinking it's great. I was thinking about, it's been depicted, Susie Hanson's husband drew it, and we spoke about this on the show with Susie, that she was up on craft and the Zetas were showing her and some hybrid children and some other beings, Zetas and hybrids and a whole bunch of kids, how to dematerialize their body and reform it into other things like a flower or a pen or a cup of tea or whatever, like they would take apart the molecular structure of their body and then reconform it into something else. And she was saying that the Zetas could do it, the hybrid kids kind of did it, but the human kids, or the more human kids, because they're all hybrids, couldn't do it. And I said, why couldn't the humans do it? And she said, we couldn't reach that level of frequency. And I said, well, what was the level of frequency? And she said, it was kind of beyond joy. It was such a heightened frequency. It was like this high frequency that because of the majority of the human component and our range of emotion, the kids were struggling to reach that high frequency so that they could physically manipulate their molecular structure like the Zetas could. And I thought, wow, that was really interesting.
Yeah, so inside craft's a different environment than inside the normal human environment. So,
well, she spoke about the room that they were in. She didn't call it what you called it, the synthetic quantum environment, but she said that they were in a room that was kind of like misty, and it felt like they were sort of floating, like the walls and the floor had sort of dropped away and they were sort of floating. So she was explaining what you're talking about, that quantum
So
environment.
we did that inside the house the last week just for people.
That's what it
And they were
feels like,
floating and,
being in a
you know, they felt they were floating. And so the thing is inside the craft, the difference is the time compression.
That's what creates the mist.
The compression creates the mist.
Okay.
The molecular, that's a big word.
Molecular structure.
No, it's actually a bigger word than that.
Oh,
It's
okay.
molecular rises, if that even exists, the compression. And when we did the SQE the other day, we actually had steam. I had steam coming off my body when I did it. So,
So how do you do it, Paul?
look,
Or both of you?
How do you do it? I think you need to know how to heterodyne. Heterodyning is everything. If you don't know how to heterodyne, then of course you need assistance to do something. That's the first thing. Although you can learn how to do it, you need to be shown how something works. Like, I've got a screwdriver and you've never seen it and I hand it to you. You don't know what to do. Do I bake a cake with it? What do I do with this thing, right? And so with the consciousness technology, you've got to be shown how it works. And it's not just a one-off sort of thing that they do. They, like the children, I've been in the training areas with all the children as well. I've seen I was there as a human and I was with about 2,000 Zeta children. And there was this big doorway that was about a metre across, and it had ribbons of light all going through it. And it was like there was water running through it. And they asked me to come down and step through the door to dematerialise. I refused. I just absolutely refused. And so they got one of the other Zeta children to come, and he just stepped through and then came back. And they were teaching the children how to step from their environment to this physical environment here through this technology.
Why did you refuse?
Because I was terrified.
You were a kid at the time?
I was a kid, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's be absolutely clear here. No. People that are contacted and abducted are generally terrified most of the time until they get to a point where they're not. And when you first start, like you're on craft and everything's okay. And next thing someone says, hey, jump into this meat grinder for me. You're like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, but it's interesting, Paul, because I've thought about this. I'm going back to the Star Trek technology of beam me up, Scotty. I saw Deepak Chopra about 25 years ago talking about how everything's holographic. And one day when we understand that, we'll be able to do what happens on Star Trek. And, it was so interesting. It was in the convention centre here in Sydney. People were just walking out in droves because they just couldn't reach that level of understanding. And I'm like, tell me more. Because to them, it's fantasy, Yeah. And I'm thinking, if you're so identified with this container being you, the thought of, as you said, a meat grind, of your particles being taken apart, shift through space, and then reconformed, like that beam me up, Scotty, or teleportation, or whatever you want to call it. What do you call that? Like that, what you're talking about is terrifying, because you think of the physical container being you, right? And so then you'll die. But when you're not attached to this body being who you are, then it's not as terrifying.
Yeah, but that's the difference. You see, if I devised 1,000 different tests today, 1,000, and didn't tell you about any of them, but just said to you, look, here's test number 6, and it was totally going to rock your world, okay? It doesn't matter who you are or what training you've got, and SyAnn would probably agree with this, when you're being tested, and we're always being tested, you have to recognize the test first. You then step into it and you have to work out what the test is. And then you've got to try and pass the test. And that's what the Zetas do. They test everybody all the time. And so quite often when you're in these teaching environments, they can be testing you. They're not that, it's not the test that's the issue, it's the outcome for them. They want to see what is your ability to produce this outcome that they can produce. it all comes back to the human species. They see that in the future, the human species is going to be part of a community, an extraterrestrial community. Now, some would say that we already are. Well, we're partially there. But when we have the UAP disclosure properly and Congress and all the other things, and when we're and it's all over and it's all on the table, we've got these massive cognitive shifts that the whole planet has to do. Now we're walking into who are we as a race as compared to other races? What are the things that they're going to ask us to do? Will we be able to do them? I mean, from a day-to-day working with the Zetas, this is the challenges that we have. They say, today you're going to do this, and we go, oh, I have no idea how I'm going to accomplish that. They said, well, we'll see how you go and we'll help you. And so they're always there to help. If someone says to you, we want you to heterodyne to this place, you go, okay, I don't know how to heterodyne.
So just explain to us what heterodyne is again.
Yeah. Heterodyning is using, okay, so we need to understand a couple of basic concepts. One is that the breath holds harmonics. And the breath is the first thing you do when you're born and the last thing you do when you transition. The breath holds within it every single capacity that's required for you to do anything. Heal yourself, move up in consciousness, move down in consciousness. Once you understand how your breathing works and the harmonics in your breath work, you can understand how the energy of your body works, and then you can start to use it to, this is in one of the books that's just come out by William Schmidt and myself. It talks about hemoglobin and how oxygen allows you to create an expanded environment within yourself, okay? Once you know how to do that, you start to move into a heterodyne state, and those heterodyne states allow you to populate that with consciousness, and then you can start to see and feel out for other consciousness around you. Now, initially, the first one that you may do is spirit people because it's easy, but to look for other ET, you may need to use gateway technologies to do that.
So a heterodyne state is an expanded state of awareness.
A heterodyne state is a relationship with another being.
Conjoined state
in
of frequency.
A conjoined state of frequency. Thank you very much.
That's all right.
Conjoined state of frequency. So hetra meaning hexagon, like 5. Heterodyne. Is there a...
No, I don't know what the... I don't know.
I don't believe the numbers are of any significance.
No.
So a heterodyne state is when you're in a... Say that again.
Conjoined
state of frequency.
Conjoined state of frequency with another consciousness, with another being.
If I had 2 tuning forks here, and one's 1 octave higher than the other, right? And I don't activate this one, but this one I go bing. Now the problem is, if this one doesn't activate, I won't get 2 frequencies. Of course, I could move closer to that one that would activate it. It would start to cause it to start to vibrate. But if I activate them both at the same time and move them together, within the middle, there'll be a conjoined state of frequency. That's heterodyne states.
Beautiful. Where does the word come from, heterodyne? Where's that word?
No idea. I think it's actually a scientific word.
I think, yeah.
You can look it up. It's heterodyning's to do with sound and frequencies and stuff, yeah. Quite often the scientists had to put words to what the Zetas were saying. The Zetas would explain things and the humans would go, well, that sounds like that and that sounds like this, and we'll just put those words together and create that sentence.
That's exactly what they did.
Yeah. The future is bright. I mean, the future is bright. You know, I don't know if you heard of Garnet Schulhauser, Canadian guy. His spirit guide takes him whizzing around the cosmos and shows him multiple, stuff, a lot of stuff, planets, people, God, everything. Anyway, so he was saying that he's been to a couple of parallel realities of Earth. And one of the parallel realities of Earth was they went through the pandemic, and as they were experimenting to get out of this, problem that we're experiencing, they developed teleportation, and that was the outcome of the pandemic. Like moving into so their society became they could use, like, all transport stopped, all flights, so we didn't need oil and gas. Oil and for to propel vehicles anymore because we were just teleporting everywhere.
Well, the thing is that there's been a statement made by some people that work in contracted areas overseas that every technology that you can think of already exists.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Already exists.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And is in operation on the planet here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so I know we've been yakking for ages. That's just so many questions to ask you. One last question. Okay. So we know what the Zetas can do for us. They can help us with healing. They can help us with technology. They can help us with all this stuff that we've been talking about. What are we doing for them?
Oh, well, if everybody right now could sit and meditate every day and just find stillness within themselves, then that's exactly what all the races require humans to do. Because stillness provides the capacity for communication and conversation with them and with yourself. And once you're communicating with yourself, you can then start to understand what is important, what is the importance of self.
But what do they want from us, from the human race?
But that's exactly what they want. No, they want that. They do. And the reason they want that is because on the timeline in the future, they see these human species interacting with them. Mm-hmm. And they do not want to interact with humans in their current state of consciousness.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. So I've heard that they have, as they developed their intellect, they greatly reduced their emotional capacity. And so a lot of the hybrid programs are to bring that emotional capacity back online. That's why they're hybridizing. They're doing the, have you heard that from your mob?
No, they're not. You're talking about the hybridization of humans. Is that what you're talking? Yeah,
like them splicing their DNA with our DNA because they develop their intellect. That's why they have the big heads and they're
that's
so they
got
don't
nothing to do with the Zetas.
That's got nothing to do with it. The Zetas.
So they have the same emotional range as we do.
No, they prefer. They don't need the same emotional range. I don't need to. If I'm in service to you and everything about me is helping you, I don't need anger in my life.
You don't attach.
I don't need biases. I need love and I need communication, and I need the things that are meant to support a race, not emotions or consciousness that creates perceptions of negative behaviour. So from their perspective, they don't need to learn anything from humans. It's the humans that need to learn something from them. That's my opinion. I've been with them. I've seen the way that they act, the way they operate, the way they do everything, and we can always learn from them. They are observing our behaviour. They are observing it, but they're trying to work out how to develop contact protocols. How do you contact a whole species where half the people are starving, homeless, all these things? Well, they need to develop contact protocols for this to take place.
Yes. Oh, it's been absolutely fascinating. I think I've asked all the questions I've got for now. I think I've got about 1 million more. But yeah, a lot of the information is in your books, right? So that excerpt that I read on your website, Introduction to the Race. So it's on your website, the-zeta-connection.com/introduction-to-the-race.html. I'll put the link under all the podcasts. It's absolutely fascinating.
A lot of people find the primer of Zeta Race too scientific. So the Zetas put out the Zeta interviews, and that has about 670 pages or something. And that's just about 30% of the information that they've given across. And then we've worked out yesterday, we actually put out 10 books, and we're about to put out our last one in about 12 months' time, where we talk about what it was like to be on the inside working with the Zetas and being trained by them. So that's going to be quite interesting.
What's in the future for you guys? Where do you see all this going?
We just carry on.
It's a day-by-day thing.
Yeah.
We're not.
Just help people work through their contact experiences, help them to resolve what they're going through on a daily basis or weekly basis?
We get contacted by a lot of people. I mean, we have to calendar the contact. This is the thing with people. So it's more about somebody coming to tell us what's going on, and then we use our experience as mediums and contactees to work out what's the best way around this. What race is that person actually dealing with?
Is it spirit activity?
Is it
extraterrestrial? Is it astral?
Yeah.
It's not. Some people have so much going on around them that one is triggering another, and we have to spend time with them to understand each element of what they're experiencing. It's not always just it's ET. Because
in the end, people want to understand, what's going on around them in their environment. And it's okay to guess. For some people like to guess. We don't want to guess. If we don't know, we say we don't know, which is really important.
You spoke about the woo community before, the UFO community and the woo community. Well, I'm part of the woo community, darling one. All love and light, all positive. Because when you do contact that aspect of soul, you do understand that every experience that you're electing to have as an experience that the soul is wanting, and that regardless of the trauma of it all, it has an evolutionary bias to it. It has an opportunity to evolve the soul, and it is all positively. Ultimately, it is all a positive experience, even when from this perspective, from the human perspective, it seems like trauma and drama and devastation. From the soul's perspective, because the soul is that God energy, is pure positive energy.
It is, but the thing, Karen, the only reason I mention the woo community is just as a frame of reference.
I know what you're talking about. People say it all the time. Oh, these people are all into love and light, into love and light.
It's not. So the reason I mentioned,
but it is all love and light.
I just want people to evidence. I just want people to think about evidence. That's all.
Common sense.
Common sense. Because say you're a person that's surrounded by a whole lot of other people, like a family, and this person isn't evidencing what's happening with their downloads and all the rest of it, that's going to affect everybody else. And then we get the family come to us and, how do I work with this? How do I deal with this? And we're more about to the person, well, what evidence have you, to the actual person that's doing it? We want to help you if possible. What evidence do you have that this is taking place? Because what we do affects others. We're all intermeshed.
I understand. I understand that we're working with a community of the human race that is a very fixed, closed mind, and we're programmed for the most part. We're constantly programmed. I was talking about this on another show the other day, that even our advertising is telling us about our limitation. You're not enough. It's constantly telling us what to believe, how to believe, and establishing or re-establishing our limitation. So we're working with that when we're trying to expand consciousness and, reach out to other forms in the cosmos that understand that we are infinite, multidimensional, creative potential.
But that's part of the planet. That's the Schumann frequency that's doing that. That's part of this whole thing's programmed, not just by anybody, it's programmed by the planet. See, the Schumann frequency holds people in forgetfulness.
The
Schumann frequency holds people in forgetfulness. When people move from spirit realm into the physical realm, physical form, they forget where they've come from. The Schumann frequency provides that function. The extraterrestrials have also taken the Schumann frequency and used it to embed screen technologies in contactees.
Wow. So that's a whole show as well, Paul. And so that's a whole show, because that's something that was a question I had. How do they create screen? How do they wipe your mind so that you don't remember? So many contactees, don't remember until they go into hypnosis. Not you guys, but a lot. And how do they create screen technology? So you're saying they take that's a whole show. That's fascinating. So
there's, just before we go, there's 5 types of screen technologies. And those 5 types are embedded as an overlay into the consciousness. This is not too difficult to understand. We actually talk about it on our own.
And it also explains why meditation is so important, because that's what elevates us above the Schumann frequency.
Interesting. Wow, interesting. okay, because there's been a lot of talk, people have been talking about the Schumann frequency, like there's been a lot of activity within the Schumann frequency. There doesn't appear to be anything happening physically. I don't know, there's no bombs going off, or maybe there are, but there's been a lot of activity in the Schumann frequency. And
but
yeah,
the
I look at
difference
it and go, okay.
The difference with the Schumann frequency is that the Zeta said 12 months ago that there was going to be a cognitive shift for the species. It would going to then cause the astral to expand, and then the fabric of the astral to move into the physical reality. So now people are seeing blended realities. Okay, and on top of those blended realities, they've also got screen memory. So it's not clear for a lot of people actually what's going on, and that's why it takes time. What is a type A, type B, C, D, and E screen memory? How do they work together to create a reality, a narrative within a person's life? Okay, so
I'm thinking about something Tanis Halliwell said on the show recently, who's a Canadian spiritual teacher. She said that as we're shifting in frequency collectively, we're moving through the lower densities of the astral, and that's when we're experiencing a lot of the corruption and pedophilia and the lot of the terrible things that are being revealed now, is that we're moving through those lower levels of the astral where souls can explore density in all manner of ways.
Well, the astral is the creation of the human species.
Some call it the hell realms and so on and so forth. And
well, it's a collection of every thought that's ever been had.
Right, yeah.
And that's why some people think that they're being abducted, and they're not, because all they're doing is reliving somebody else's experience in their dream states. A lot of people that are getting dream contact from extraterrestrials are only experiencing what other people experienced in the physical, but that moved into the astral as an image. I wrote about that in one of the Kathleen's books anyway.
But there's many levels and many dimensions within the astral, and some people talk about heaven as an astral, experience, or the spirit side. I mean, I think that our language and our labeling, I heard you talking about soul versus spirit, and I think that it's just that we use these labels to try and explain things, and our language is, when we learn telepathic communication, or telepathy as some people have called it, and we have that inner knowing, like when we send that message through empathy, then we have that cognitive understanding outside the limitation of words.
Very limited. We're very limited
in our communication. But wow, there's so much to unravel. It's been absolutely fascinating. I knew this would be enjoyable. I was so looking forward to it, because I was reading that thing last night going, oh, this is so cool. It's just been wonderful. Thank you so much, SyAnn.
I really enjoyed it.
Oh, it's been amazing. You guys are amazing, and your art is beautiful. And where can people see your art, SyAnn?
Where can people see your art?
There's some of it on our website. I've got a little section on there somewhere. I don't even know what it's called, but if you went through the menu,
the art section,
some of it's on there. Yeah.
Beautiful. And do you do art specifically for people? Like, people say, commissions? Yeah. Gorgeous. And obviously you're still doing healings and facilitations, and I think it says in your bio that you're working with many people privately to understand their extraterrestrial paranormal experiences. A lot of information on your websites, and you run free training sessions to empower people to develop their own natural abilities, as well as offering private training groups covering many different metaphysical subjects, and occasionally offering public sittings for people to speak with the Zeta beings and spirit people that you work with. I would love to join one of your sittings when you're speaking with your Zeta family. Please. I suppose, how do we stay included in that? Put email on your website?
Yeah, if people want to get in touch about any aspect of anything, just send us an email. It's all on the website. Yeah.
Fascinating. Thank you again, guys. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
It was lovely to see you. Thank you.
OMG is all I can say. Oh my God. What time is it? I've just spent another 2 hours chatting with SyAnn and Paul. I wish I'd had the recording on for some of what we said, but we kept saying, okay, I'll let you go, I'll let you go. We just kept talking and talking and talking. Wow. Wow. They're up in up the top of Queensland, or middle top, where it's nice and hot. They said it's 25 degrees up there today. It's freezing here in Sydney. Well, it's not too cold, about 17, 18 Celsius. I'm talking Celsius for those people who are still in Fahrenheit. We talked about so much more. Anyway, so we're going to hatch a plan to get together to maybe talk about more, do some sort of conference a bit later on. Yeah, there's just a lot to talk about. So we were speaking about, anyway, physical experience. So the one thing that came out of all that for all of us is, if you want physical evidence, be careful for what you ask for, because you're going to get it. It might be physical evidence, like something on your body, physically on your body. But if you want physical evidence, you have to ask for it, and they'll give it to you. They'll give it to you just for you. You can show people. And they said to me, I was chatting to them through the mob as I was talking to Paul, saying, they said, you can show people stuff, and everybody has their own autonomy to believe or not to believe, no matter what the physical evidence. That's the way the human mind works, right? We are skeptical, most of us. Most of us are very skeptical. We need to see something to believe it, or we need to actually have our own experience to believe anything. But if you want physical evidence of extraterrestrial beings, around you, whatever, ask and you'll get it. Ask and you shall receive. Anyway, God, I tell you what, just so much more was said after that. I know I shouldn't say this after every show, but we're talking about screen memories and how they create screen memories and wipe our minds and all that stuff. But we'll get Paul and SyAnn back on the show, and we'll talk about more, because there's a lot to talk about. Yeah. Paul was saying that he trans-channels the Zetas, that they merge their consciousness in his body. I said, what happens to your consciousness? It says it dissolves. Unlike many trans-channelers that I've had on the show, who are, when you're in a trance, it means that you're not consciously inside the body hearing and listening to what's being spoken through your mouth and using your brain. I'm not a trans-channeler. When I have communication speaking through me, I'm completely aware of what's happening, and I'm questioning it, and I'm asking, and I'm here. But trance channelers are not. And many, like I remember some said they go to another dimension or another place and just hang out. I said to Paul, what happens to yours? And he says it just dissolves. It sort of ceases to exist. I don't really understand that. I don't think consciousness can completely dissolve. But from his human perspective, and obviously when he re-emerges back into the container of his physical body, he has no memory of what's been going on, which is what a lot of trance channelers have said. I'd love to explore that further with him, but he has no memory of where he's been. It's like he's just been blacked out, like no dreams, no conscious memory of what's happened during that time. His trance channels and Zetas. And SyAnn was saying that she's been doing that too, but she can only do it for 8 minutes because their frequency is such a different frequency to the human body that it really upsets the homeostasis. My words, not his, but the balance of the body. And Paul was saying that when he first started doing it, he was just vomiting and vomiting and vomiting. The body just has to acclimate to the frequency of their consciousness. Yeah, it's just really fascinating stuff. And he was saying that when they physically turn up, their frequency, the radiation of their body is so different to the radiation of our body that we get sick in their presence. And again, we have to acclimate. We have to get used to it bit by bit, little by little, to be physically in their physical presence. I just find this stuff so fascinating. So fascinating. Do you like the picture I put behind me? Kind of scary, but yeah, interesting. Just so interesting. Anyway, those two are fascinating. I want to talk to them again. They're miles away from where I am in Sydney. But anyway, it's nice and sunny up there where they are on a winter's day here in Australia. All right, I'm not going to talk too much more. I could say a lot more about what we spoke about, but I'll get them back on the show or into the inner sanctum, and we'll do more. I'll get them into the inner sanctum, then you can quiz them. And just fascinating. Big love. Thanks for listening and watching. It's been a long show, so I'm not going to yak. And coming into the inner sanctum, I have no idea who's coming in. You'll check it out on the website, karenswain.com/inner sanctum. You'll see the guests. I've just secured another conversation with Penny Kelly. She's coming in October, August. I can't remember what month. But I haven't spoken to Penny Kelly for a while. She's been raging online, doing her talks and Patreon. And yeah, anyway, I had Penny on the show a few times over the last few years, but I haven't spoken to her for a while. So she's going to come into the Inner Sanctum this year sometime. And yeah, lots of fabulous people. All right. Big love to you all. Remember, check out the book Awakened by Death if you haven't already. And I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.